before police could crack the case wide open. The photographs that dog appeared in would help send 2 people to prison for life. Manchester, England, in the early 1960s, was a city still shedding its Victorian slums. Gorton, on the city's east side, was one of the neighborhoods marked for post-war clearance, rows of aging terraced housing, families stacked close together, children playing in streets that would soon be demolished for new estates. It was here that Brady and Myra Hindley crossed paths. Brady was born Ian Duncan Stewart in the Gorbals district of Glasgow on the 2nd of January, 1938, the son of Margaret Peggy Stewart, an unmarried tea-room waitress. He never knew his father, whom his mother described only as a journalist who had died before Brady was born. Unable to support him, she gave him into the care of Mary and John Sloan, a local couple with 4 children of their own. He took their surname and grew up as Ian Sloan, though his mother continued visiting throughout his childhood. At 9, a family trip to Loch Lomond reportedly left him with a lasting attachment to the outdoors. Various authors have written that he tortured animals as a boy, killing a cat at age 10, burning another alive, stoning dogs, though Brady denied these specific accusations. At Shawlands Academy, a school for above-average pupils, his behavior worsened. He appeared twice before juvenile court for housebreaking, and after a relationship with a girlfriend ended when he threatened her with a flick knife, he was placed on probation. By then his mother had remarried in Manchester to a fruit merchant named Patrick Brady, and Ian took his stepfather's name and a job as a fruit porter at Smithfield Market Hall. Caught smuggling stolen lead seals within the year, he served 3 months at Strangeways Prison, then 2 years in Borstal, ending up in the tougher unit at Hull after being caught drunk on alcohol he'd brewed himself. Released in November 1957, he eventually landed a clerical job at Millwoods Merchandising, a chemical distribution company in Gorton, in January 1959. There he read Mein Kampf, books on Nazi atrocities, and the works of the Marquis de Sade, and rode a Tiger Cub motorcycle out to the Pennines. Hindley was born in Crumpsall on the 23rd of July, 1942 and raised in Gorton by a father who had served with the Parachute Regiment and was, by her own account, an alcoholic frequently violent toward his wife and children. The family home was cramped enough that Hindley slept in a single bed beside her parents' double. When her sister Maureen was born in 1946, 5-year-old Myra was sent to live with her grandmother nearby. Her father taught her to fight rather than run from conflict. At around age 8, after a boy scratched her face, he threatened to leather her if she didn't retaliate, and she knocked the boy down. She later wrote, "At 8 years old I'd scored my first victory." In 1957, a close friend, 13-year-old Michael Higgins, drowned in a local reservoir after inviting Hindley swimming. She had gone elsewhere instead, and was reportedly devastated, organizing a collection for his funeral wreath. She grew closer to the Catholic Church afterward, taking the confirmation name Veronica. She worked as a junior clerk, briefly got engaged at 17 before calling it off, and took judo lessons before joining Millwoods as an 18-year-old typist in January 1961. Hindley became infatuated with Brady almost immediately, recording her fascination with him in a diary, though it took nearly a year before he asked her to the cinema in December 1961. Their courtship followed a pattern, an X-rated film, then back to her house for German wine, then reading aloud to each other from accounts of Nazi atrocities during lunch breaks. Hindley began bleaching her hair blonde, wearing thick crimson lipstick, high boots and leather jackets. She joined a rifle club, bought a .22 rifle, a Webley .45 and a Smith & Wesson .38, and passed her driving test in November 1963 after 3 failed attempts. The couple planned bank robberies that never materialized and instead grew absorbed in photography, buying darkroom equipment and taking explicit photographs of each other. By mid-1963, Brady had moved into the house on Bannock Street that Hindley shared with her grandmother. Hindley later said that around the beginning of July 1963, Brady began talking about committing the perfect murder, a fixation she linked to his interest in a novel about 2 young men who believed they could kill without being caught. The case broke open not through months of more searches but through one terrified teenager standing in a phone box before dawn. On the night of the 6th of October, 1965, David Smith, married to Hindley's younger sister Maureen, was summoned to the house at 16 Wardlebrook Avenue and told to wait in the kitchen. When Brady gave a signal, Smith heard high-pitched screaming and ran into the living room to find 17-year-old Edward Evans on the floor, his head and shoulders on the couch, Brady standing over him with a hatchet raised. Smith described hearing a terrible hard blow as Brady struck Evans, then watched him strangle the boy with a length of electrical cord. Brady had sprained his ankle in the struggle. The body was too heavy for Smith to move alone, so the two wrapped it in plastic sheeting and left it in the spare bedroom. Smith went home, drank a cup of tea his wife made him, then vomited and told her everything. At 6:10 the next morning, having armed himself with a screwdriver and a bread knife in case Brady came looking for him, he called police from a phone box on the estate. Superintendent Bob Talbot arrived at the house disguised in a bread deliveryman's overall over his uniform. Hindley denied at the door that she had a husband or that any man was inside, then let him in anyway. Brady was lying on a divan, writing a letter to his employer about his ankle injury. Talbot said he was investigating an act of violence involving guns. When officers asked for the key to a locked spare bedroom, Hindley claimed it was at her workplace. Only after Brady told her to hand it over did she produce it. Evans' body was inside. As he dressed for arrest, Brady said, "Eddie and I had a row and the situation got out of hand." Hindley was not arrested that day. She returned to Millwoods over the next 4 days, asked to be dismissed so she'd qualify for unemployment benefits, and burned an envelope of Brady's papers in an ashtray, later claiming she never opened it but believed it held robbery plans. She was arrested on the 11th of October and charged as an accessory, then remanded to Risley Prison. Searching the house, police found an exercise book bearing the name John Kilbride, a name connected to an unsolved disappearance nearly 2 years old. Brady told detectives he and Smith had killed Evans and that Hindley had only done what she had been told. Smith mentioned that Brady had asked him to help dispose of incriminating items, and that Brady had a thing about railway stations. A search of left luggage offices turned up 2 suitcases at Manchester Central Station on the 15th of October. The claim ticket was later found tucked inside Hindley's prayer book. Inside were costumes, negatives, notes, and 9 pornographic photographs of a young girl, gagged with a scarf, along with a 16-minute audio recording of a girl identifying herself as Leslie Ann Weston, crying and begging to go home to her mother. Downey's actual mother was shown 2 of the photographs and asked to confirm the voice on the tape was her daughter's. Officers canvassing the neighborhood found Patricia Hodges, an 11-year-old who had ridden along with Brady and Hindley on their trips to collect peat from Saddleworth Moor, and who was able to point out their favored spots along the A635. On the 16th of October, searchers found an arm bone protruding from the peat, first assumed to be Kilbride's, then identified the next day as Downey's, whose body was still visually recognizable and whose clothing her mother identified. Photographs of apparently empty moorland scenes, which Brady had deliberately removed from the house before his arrest, were used to guide the search further. On the 21st of October, searchers found Kilbride's badly decomposed remains, identifiable only by clothing. What unsettled investigators most wasn't a body pulled from the peat, it was a photograph of a dog. Many of the landscape images recovered from the suitcase featured Hindley's pet dog, Puppet, sometimes photographed as a young puppy. To establish when the pictures had been taken, and therefore help date the graves, detectives needed to know the dog's exact age. A veterinary surgeon was brought in to examine Puppet, which required placing the animal under general anesthetic. The dog never woke up. Hindley's reaction was, according to those present, one of the very few moments of unguarded emotion detectives witnessed from her during the entire investigation. She accused the police of having murdered her dog and wrote to her mother that she didn't think anything could hurt her more, adding that her only consolation was the thought that some moron might have gotten hold of Puppet and hurt him instead, a sentence written by a woman then facing charges connected to the deaths of children. That detail sat awkwardly beside everything else emerging from the house on Wardlebrook Avenue, a tape of a child pleading to go home, a schoolbook with a dead boy's name inside it, suitcases hidden at a train station. Hindley spent decades afterward constructing an account of her own limited role in each death: in the car, over the brow of a hill, running a bath, looking out a window, always placing herself, in her own retelling, just outside the room at the moment a child died. Brady's account diverged sharply. In his version, Hindley was present for, and at times a direct participant in, the assaults themselves. The 16-minute recording of Downey's murder, played aloud in open court, captured both their voices as the child screamed. It did not settle, and no later confession fully settled, the exact shape of what Hindley did in those rooms, only that by every account, including eventually her own, she was there for it. The trial opened on the 19th of April, 1966 in a specially prepared courtroom at Chester Assizes, the dock fitted with bulletproof glass in case someone tried to kill the defendants themselves. Security ran to thousands of pounds. Journalists from around the world booked up most of the city's hotel rooms, and crowds stood outside the building every day of the 14-day proceeding. Smith, the chief prosecution witness, testified for the Crown after selling his story to the News of the World, a deal the judge criticized as gross interference with the course of justice without finding it had altered his evidence. Brady testified for over 8 hours, Hindley for 6, both denying the extent of their involvement to the end. On the 6th of May, after a little over 2 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted Brady of all 3 murders charged and Hindley of 2, plus a lesser charge of harboring Brady. With the death penalty abolished 6 months earlier, both received life imprisonment, Brady 3 concurrent terms, Hindley 2, plus 7 years. Justice Fenton Atkinson called them 2 sadistic killers of the utmost depravity and said he saw no reasonable prospect of reform for Brady. The case did not close there. In 1985, Brady reportedly told a journalist from the Sunday People that he had also killed Pauline Ridd and Keith Bennett, names police had long suspected but never charged him with. Hindley formally confessed to all 5 murders on the 10th of February, 1987, in a taped statement running more than 17 hours. The detective who took it, Peter Topping, later said he felt he'd witnessed a great performance rather than a genuine confession.